We were buried alive in the sands of Morocco. Our crime was accepting Jesus and our sentence was death. But before we were killed, heaven spoke. I will never forget that day in the desert. The air was so dry it scorched my lungs and the sun burned against my skin like open flame. I remember thinking, this is how it ends for us. Buried up to our necks in the sand, waiting for death. But what happened next shattered everything I thought I knew about God, about fear, and about what true faith really means. My name is Nibble, and if you're listening, it's because God still brings life out of the sand. I am 19 years old. I was born and raised in a quiet village near Arakidia in southeastern Morocco, where dusty roads wind through olive groves and time feels like it moves slower than the rest of the world. Life in our village is simple and deeply religious. My father is the imam of the mosque in our community, a man known for his strong voice, wise teachings, and strict devotion to Islam. In our home, the Quran was treated with the highest respect. I was taught from a young age that questioning our faith was not only disrespectful but dangerous. By the time I was 10, I could recite long passages of the Quran from memory. My parents were proud of me. I prayed 5 times a day, fasted during Ramadan, and followed every rule I was taught. I believed I was doing everything right until one afternoon changed everything. It happened on a hot Thursday in early spring. I was walking through the market in the center of town just like I had done hundreds of times before. I wasn't looking for anything in particular, just passing time after helping my father clean the mosque courtyard. That's when I saw him, a man, maybe in his late 30s, standing near a stall selling dates and figs. He didn't look like a tourist, but he didn't look like one of us either. His skin was darker and his clothes were simple but clean. What caught my attention was the way he was speaking to an older man. His tone was calm, not forceful, but I could hear a few words that made me stop walking. He said something about Issa Jesus and love that forgives. That alone was strange. We are taught that Jesus is a prophet, nothing more. But this man, he spoke differently, like he knew him personally. I paused by the edge of the stall, pretending to look at some dried apricots, but my ears were focused on their conversation. The older man didn't seem interested and walked away. The stranger turned and looked directly at me. For a moment I thought about leaving. I knew I shouldn't be listening to people talk about religion that wasn't Islam, but then he smiled and said quietly, "Do you know why Isa came?" I froze. I had never been asked a question like that. I opened my mouth to say something, maybe to defend what I was taught, but nothing came out. Instead, I asked, "What do you mean?" The man stepped closer and said gently, "He came to give life, not rules." Before I could respond, he handed me a small folded paper and said, "Read this when you are alone." Then he turned and walked away like nothing happened. My heart was racing. I quickly tucked the paper into my pocket and left the market. That night after dinner and evening prayer, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. The words he said kept echoing in my mind. He came to give life, not rules. What did that mean? Islam had always been about rules, prayers, fasting, cleanliness, obedience. I sat up and took the paper from my pocket. It was a small printed note with just a few lines. Jesus is not only a prophet. He is the Son of God who died and rose again to give you life. Read the Angel New Testament and find out for yourself. My hands trembled. My first instinct was to tear it up. This was dangerous. If my father found it, I would be in serious trouble, but I didn't tear it. I stared at those words until I could hear them in my head without looking. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept wondering what if it was true. The next few days passed slowly. I avoided the market, afraid I might see the man again. But deep inside I was curious, more than curious. I needed to know more. But how? There was no church in our village, and asking questions about Christianity could cause rumors, even arrest. Then I remembered the old Medina on the edge of town, a place where merchants from different regions came to sell their goods. Some of them were foreigners, and it was known for having things that were hard to find. The next day, I made up an excuse to go there. I wandered through the narrow alleys until I reached a small bookstall hidden between a spice shop and a carpet weaver. I asked the man quietly if he had any books about Isa in French or Arabic. He looked at me for a moment, then turned and pulled out a thin, worn book wrapped in cloth. "Keep it hidden," he said. And don't come back here asking again. I walked home with a book hidden under my shirt, my heart pounding with every step. I felt like I was doing something criminal, though I hadn't even opened it yet. That night, when everyone was asleep, I lit the small lamp beside my bed and unwrapped the cloth. The book was a French-Arabic copy of the New Testament. I had never seen anything like it. I opened to the first page and started reading the Gospel of Matthew. At first, I was confused. There were names I didn't recognize and stories that didn't make sense. But then I read about Jesus healing people, feeding the hungry, and speaking about love, not just for friends, but for enemies. His words were simple, but they felt powerful. Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. I read that verse over and over. It felt like someone was speaking directly to me through the page. For weeks, I read in secret every night. I would wait until everyone had gone to sleep, then quietly open the New Testament and continue reading. The more I read, the more I began to feel something I couldn't explain. It wasn't just information. It was like the words were alive. They didn't speak about fear or punishment, but love, mercy, and a God who wanted to be close to us, not far away. I started to compare what I had always known to what I was now discovering. In Islam, I had always tried to be good enough, afraid that any small mistake might anger Allah. But this Jesus spoke of grace, something I didn't have to earn. I couldn't tell anyone what I was doing. I kept my Bible wrapped in the same cloth and hid it inside a wooden box under my bed. But every night, I opened it with trembling hands, hungry to know more. One night I came to the story of Jesus on the cross. I had heard before that Christians believed he died, but I never understood why. Now reading it for myself, something inside me broke. The way he forgave the people who were killing him. The way he cried out, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." I couldn't hold back my tears. This didn't sound like a prophet. It sounded like someone greater. That night I closed the book and sat in silence. My whole body felt heavy, like I was carrying a weight I never noticed before. And then I whispered, "If you are real, if you really are the Son of God, I want to know you." It was not a perfect prayer. I didn't know how to speak to Jesus properly. But something happened in that moment. A strange peace came over me. I didn't understand it, but I knew my life had just begun to change. After the night I first prayed to Jesus, everything inside me started to shift. I still followed my daily routines, going to the mosque, helping my father, reciting verses of the Quran, but none of it felt the same anymore. I wasn't trying to disrespect my family or my religion. I just felt like I had found something deeper. At night, I continued to read the New Testament, and each time the words touched something in me that had never been touched before. I longed to talk to someone about it, someone who understood. I felt completely alone. Then one early morning, while walking through the back streets near the edge of the village, I saw a small cross drawn on a cracked wall behind an old storage shed. It was faint, but I knew what it meant. I returned the next morning and waited. That's how I met the people who would change my life forever. The first person to approach me was a boy named Zaid. He looked young, maybe 16, with sharp eyes and quiet confidence. He walked up, looked me in the eye, and asked, "Are you searching?" I didn't need to ask what he meant. I nodded. Without saying anything more, he handed me a note and walked away. The note had simple directions scribbled on it, coordinates, and a time. Before sunrise, come alone. The next day, I followed the directions across narrow roads and rocky trails until I reached the edge of the Atlas Mountains. There, hidden between jagged rocks and dry trees, was an old abandoned farmhouse. Its walls were cracked and the wooden door hung loosely on one hinge. It looked forgotten by the world, but as I stepped inside quietly, I felt something alive. The air was still, but I could hear faint whispers. In one corner of the room, 4 young people sat on a blanket, praying in silence. One of them looked up and smiled. She was a girl around my age with deep brown eyes and a soft but steady voice. "You must be Nibble," she said. "We've been waiting for you." Her name was Illa. She was 17 and had grown up in a nearby village. Next to her sat Rami, the oldest of the group, at 21. He was tall, strong, and carried himself like someone who had seen hard things but still stood tall. Salma was 18, soft-spoken and kind, always watching and listening before speaking. Zaid, the boy who found me, was the youngest. Despite his age, he spoke with boldness and certainty. I joined them on the blanket, unsure of what to expect. They sang softly, simple songs in Arabic about God's love, freedom, and peace. Rami opened a small Bible and read a few verses. Then we all prayed. No one raised their voice. Everything was quiet, careful, and sacred. That morning was the first time I didn't feel alone. I had found people who believed what I believed, who had experienced the same fear and longing. After we prayed, we talked. I told them my story, how I had met the stranger in the market and found the New Testament. Illa shared how she had been introduced to Jesus by her cousin in Marrakesh before he was arrested. Rami had found faith while studying abroad and returned to Morocco to help others find the truth. Salma had secretly followed Jesus for a year without anyone knowing. Zaid's story was the most surprising. He had been caught with a Bible at school and beaten by his uncle, yet he never turned back. Each of us had come from different places, but somehow we had all ended up in this small, crumbling farmhouse on the side of a mountain. We didn't need a fancy building. We had each other and we had Jesus. We began meeting every morning before sunrise. Always the same place, always the same routine. We would gather quietly, pray in whispers, read from the Bible, and sing softly. Rami taught us how to study scripture and Layla often led the singing. Sometimes we shared small pieces of bread and water, remembering the sacrifice of Jesus. We were careful. No phones, no loud voices, and always keeping watch. Zaid would stand near the entrance, listening for footsteps or anything unusual. It was risky. We all knew that. In Morocco, converting from Islam to Christianity is not just a personal decision. It's seen as betrayal, shameful to the family, and punishable by law. If caught, we could be arrested, beaten, or worse. Still, we came. Something about being together made us braver.